What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with a box office breakdown video for this past weekend, which saw the release of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, with not much Black Panther, but with a lot of Wakanda Forever, if that makes any sense. Roaring, as it says here, according to the deadline, to $330 million worldwide. The big problem, of course, that's $20 million less than what it was projected to make going into the weekend. They were projecting it to be somewhere between 350 and 360. So it's coming in underneath projections, specifically in the international market. Domestically, it's actually playing out just about what many people had expected it to do. It's not really coming in underneath any of the projections that were going into the weekend. So Black Panther, as I've been saying now for months in the kind of anticipation of the film, I think that the film is going to be quite a good performer domestically. Internationally, on the other hand, I don't think it's going to be able to match up anywhere close to that of the original film. And right now, based off of this opening, I would say the chances of it getting to $1 billion, not very likely. The chances of it making its money back right now is actually still pretty good, because $330 million means that by next weekend, it most likely will cross $500 million worldwide. And if that is indeed the case, that means the situation is it only needs to make another $125 million after that point to hit its break-even point, which again just seems very, very likely, unless, of course, the wheels completely fall off. And we'll be following this movie, and we'll be following all the different trends, because this movie doesn't have any real competition going up against it in the next several weeks. And so let's go ahead and dive into the numbers themselves. Again, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, coming in with $180 million. So again, very impressive number there compared to films of recent release. Obviously much better than that of the Black Adam release, though of course this movie has a lot of stuff going for it. For one, it's got the Disney machine behind it. And if Disney can do one thing, it's market the hell out of a movie and get a lot of MCU stans to show up for their film, no matter how good or bad the movie is. The fact that they were able to get this many people to go see a movie that's over 2.5 hours long, hey, I'm going to give credit where credit is due, and that is still impressive. But is it as impressive as the other films that they have released, or other films that have been released around the same amount of money in its opening? That is, of course, something that we will take a look at to see what we can likely expect for the long-range forecasting, even after just 1 week, of what range we're likely to see the film end up in. Black Adam finally got dropped from the number one spot, making $8.6 million in its fourth week of release. This dropped another 53%. Now that there's actual competition for this movie, it's going to be drowned out pretty quickly by Black Panther. The one thing it's got going for it is that it's not as long as Black Panther, but that's not really saying all that much. Black Adam not getting a China release, as at least the recording of this video, as had been projected to happen, means that this film has basically no other country that it can rely on. And now that there's competition, that factor is now gone. It was without competition for quite a while and was not able to make nearly enough. And the chances of this film being a box office flop is now actually becoming that much more of a reality. We still have a ways to go before the end of its release, but at least as of this point, the chance of it getting to its break even, not likely to happen, again, just based on the 4 weeks that we are currently in to its release. Ticket to Paradise continuing to hang around the number 3 spot again. Haven't seen this film, don't know much about the film. People in the comment section keep on trying to tell me it's actually not that bad of a movie. It's kind of a throwback to older, rom-coms in a certain fashion, in a certain way. So maybe that's the reason why it's doing well, probably with the older demographic. But hey, 29% hold, even with the release of Black Panther, making another $6.1 million. La La Crocodile also hanging around as well in the top 5 this week, $3.2 million, a 5% drop. Remember that this was a rare circumstance where last week it actually saw a huge increase in its 5th week of release. So the fact that 6 weeks in, it's losing 519 screens. It had an increase last weekend. To only drop 5% from that increase is actually quite impressive. It still has a ways to go if it has any hopes of breaking even. And that's why I still don't think necessarily that it's going to have just enough. I think that this push is happening just a little bit too late in the game. But with the holidays coming up for Thanksgiving and just the holiday season in general for December, who knows? Maybe there will be enough love for this movie for it to be able to make its money back at the box office, or at the very least, for it to have some life on physical media after it's pulled from theaters. Smile coming in the number 5 spot this week, $2.3 million, continuing to hang around after 7 weeks, has officially crossed the $100 million mark, not only worldwide, but also domestically. Well over $200 million now for this movie as far as the money it's made worldwide. Is actually looking around $100 million in net profits. So kudos to Paramount for making quite profitable films this year. Let's go ahead and talk about Black Panther, because everyone, of course, all the MCU stands especially, are going to be saying, well, $330 million, that's incredible, that's amazing, and heck, it's a lot better than Black Adam. It's like, look, both Black Adam and Black Panther are bad movies. they're both very bad. The one thing Black Adam has over Black Panther is that it's not nearly as long. So if I had to choose between the two, I'd say, well, I'd rather watch Black Adam again because at least it'll end quicker. I mean, they're just not very good. But also on paper, if we look at these numbers, Black Panther is absolutely doing significantly better than what we saw with Black Adam. In fact, we'll go ahead and pull up Black Adam's number here, $352 million. So I had said that there was a chance that Black Panther Wakanda Forever had a chance of actually even eclipsing the entire box office of Black Adam in just one weekend. Black Adam's now been out for about 4 weeks or so, right? Was it 4 weeks? Yeah, this is the 4th week of its release. And so the fact that the film, Black Panther, is at 330 means that this movie is going to pass up Black Adam by week 2. So that just kind of gives you an idea about how different these films are, and also why Black Adam likely to be a box office flop, whereas Black Panther, despite the fact that it cost $250 million to produce, still likely will have enough in the tank to hit its break-even point. The question, of course, is how profitable will the movie actually be? And that is, of course, when we have to dive into some of the numbers and comparing it to other Marvel films from not only this past year, but also comparing it to the original Black Panther as well. So one thing to note here is that it is doing better than Thor: Love and Thunder. At the same time of its release, Thor: Love and Thunder had around $144 million domestically, but it is not doing as well as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which opened to $187.4 domestically and is far below the original Black Panther, which opened to $203 million domestic. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think that this film is going to be tracking right alongside Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and what will be interesting to see is whether or not it has better legs. Remember, Doctor Strange had a massive drop-off. In fact, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was the most historic high drop-off, like the highest drop-off of any MCU film, week 1 to week 2 domestically in history. So that is something that we are going to have to consider going into next weekend is, does this film see a similar level drop? Does it, drop in the 70s percentage-wise? Does it get all the way up to the percentage drop for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness? Who knows? But is going to, I think, be the difference between whether or not we look to that film for its tracking or whether we look for Black Panther, the original Black Panther film, for its tracking. Because remember, Black Panther had very good legs and did insane numbers domestically, huge domestic push for it. Black Panther making over $700 million here in the United States, also just the entire domestic market. Whereas this movie, I don't think, based off of this opening, it's going to see that similar rate. I think that this film probably... they had originally projected the film to probably cap out around $500 million domestic. I still think that that's a possibility. The question, of course, how much does it drop off? Right now, there's actually positive word of mouth. If you look to sites like PostTrack, for instance, which is a heck of a lot more reliable than other places like Cinema Score, which I think is a complete joke, shows that there's a pretty positive word of mouth going on for at least people who were wanting to go see this film and were fans of it going in. Now, that does not necessarily mean much of anything because those can easily be skewed by the fact that they get a lot of those numbers from those seeing opening night, which means that they are much more likely to be just very excited and thrilled MCU stans, basically. And so the chances of them getting a higher rating is a lot higher than if you were just to talk to the average Joe, for instance. And so even though it has good word of mouth, that's why I think that it probably will still do pretty well domestically compared to what some people might think it will do. I think, again, $500 million is within a ballpark, within the possibility, but that would still be $200 million less than what we saw from the original Black Panther film. And so no matter how you spin it, if it's going to do well and it's going to do well enough to make its money back, the question, of course, is going to be, how does it stand up against the final totals of other films? So Thor: Love and Thunder, as I said, it's doing a little bit better domestically. I don't think it's going to get to the $400 million, though, that Thor: Love and Thunder did internationally. I could be wrong on that, but I just don't necessarily see that just based off this early stage. Those week 2 numbers are going to be very key to that. So if it doesn't even hit that, that means we're looking at the film probably capping out somewhere around the $700 million mark. Doctor Strange, remember, had a massive drop-off, but still ended up with $540 million internationally, and where the film Black Panther, I think, will probably do a little bit better rather domestically versus internationally. The film still capped out around $952. That's the reason why I think that $1 billion not likely in the cards for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And of course, that $200 million loss for the domestic market projected, at least at this point, versus the $640 million internationally, there's no way it's going to get to that number. That's just, it's just no way that's going to happen. And so when we look to that number, then we think to ourselves, okay, this film is going to come in far below that of the original Black Panther. What does that say for the MCU? What does that say for the Black Panther franchise going forward? Obviously, having Chadwick Boseman gone and them essentially using him as a plot point. I mean, there are definitely a couple of moments that I think They are showing, some respect to his character and some respect to him as an actor, but a lot of it just really does seem like they're trying to wrench the hearts of the people to make people basically have a positive view of the film simply because of having any type of dedication to Chadwick Boseman, which I think, again, is disgusting when any film or any studio actually does that. But those are just the numbers comparing this to other films. So right now, it's looking like the film, again, somewhere between $700 and $900 million as of right now. That week 2 drop is going to tell us a little bit more about where this film will probably end up by the end of its run. Black Adam's at $352.2 million because it's not seemingly getting a China release. That means the film is essentially going to be a flop. It needs to make $500 million worldwide to break even. And at this point, 4 weeks in, not really likely that's going to happen. Again, they would have to make a massive deal with China, and then Chinese audience would actually have to show up to go see it in order for any of that to even be a possibility. Ticket to Paradise at $150.3 million worldwide. Still don't quite understand that one. La La Crocodile at 72.6. So again, this is performing much better than had been expected, but it still has quite a ways to go for it to break even. And then Smile, $209.9 million worldwide, puts it at over $100 million as far as net gains are concerned. If you look at the box office charting, as you can see, with Black Panther's massive $250 million budget, right now it's looking at around $177 million in the red. Of course, I do think that it will be able to pass that up, and the reason why is because of this, right? Let's look at worldwide totals. Again, those are the last chart I showed you the comparison of domestic numbers. Well, let's see what the reported worldwide numbers comparison is, right? So right now, Black Panther Wakanda Forever reported $330 million opening weekend. Let's see any other weekends and films that were similar. Thor: Love and Thunder, right, was right up there, $28 million less. This film ended under $800 million. And so that's the reason why I said that's a possibility for this movie. Though I do think that the Love and Thunder International is going to end up better than the Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and Wakanda Forever having a better domestic than that of Thor: Love and Thunder. It'll be interesting to see how that evens out, or if it does make just around the same amount of money. Looking at the higher end of things, Jurassic World Dominion made $391, so made a lot more opening weekend, and this film just barely eked out $1 billion. And so that's why I say, $1 billion, you could theoretically say if it gets to $500 million by next weekend, it's a possibility, but that would mean that it would have to basically be willed to that amount, just like what Universal did with Jurassic World Dominion, which Disney might very well try and do that, but regardless of any of it. Some might also say, hey, but Top Gun Maverick came in below. Yeah, but Top Gun Maverick also was an exceptional film that had universal praise and acclaim and did not have, right, you might see the post-track and you might see Rotten Tomatoes and say, oh, this seems to be pretty positive. In comparison to the first film, I would have to say that you're going to see that any type of drop you see is probably where you see much more of the real story there, because though you might have a large portion of the MCU stans and even general public coming out of that film enjoying it, how many of them are actually going to go see it again, sit in the film for another 2.5 hours, actually promote it to someone else? I don't think that's going to be very likely to happen. And also, the worldwide total for Doctor Strange 2 vastly outweighs that of Black Panther. And so this is the reason also why I think $1 billion probably won't happen, because this movie dropped like a rock. Didn't get to $1 billion, though it should have. This one is at 688 by the end of its second weekend. We're looking at Black Panther getting maybe to 500 by the end of its second weekend. Of course, we have to keep into account Thanksgiving, so that could also play a factor into it in the coming weeks. But anyway, that is, I think, something for us to look at, and those are the numbers as they currently stand. And so, what are y'all's thoughts about this? Do you think Black Panther Wakanda Forever, what do you think the end total for it is going to be? As I said, I think that anyone who's going to try and say that the film's not going to make its money back or is going to be a big failure or flop, I don't think is just looking at the numbers in a accurate light. As I said, the film does need to make quite a bit, $625 million to break even. However, right now, the film is very much well on its track to do so, right? It's right now at 1.3 times its budget. It needs to get to 2.5 times its budget. For typical standards. And so the chance of that happening for this movie, I would say, is very likely, especially since there's no competition in the next several weeks, right? Nothing really is coming out until mid-December. So this movie is going to have almost a solid month of no competition. And that means that even if the film is bad, if people want to go see a movie, they're going to ultimately say, oh, what's the big movie out right now? Oh, Black Panther. And therefore, we're going to go see it. Also, keep in mind, Walt Disney is pushing out, typically like it normally does, people to go see this film in premium formatting, right? It's got the IMAX screens. It's pushing the 3D titles as well, which means the average ticket price for the movie is going to be a little bit higher when you take all tickets into account. Some people, again, are trying to push the conspiracies about them buying tickets and all these other things. None of these are based in reality. Those things have been debunked for years. Back when Captain Marvel came out, people were trying to push that nonsense, and I was able to say, hey, no, I worked at the theater, and I can explain every single thing you're trying to point out. because no one has been able to actually show verifiable proof that Disney's buying their own tickets or anything like that. It's one thing if you have groups and organizations buying tickets to give away, right? That happens for most big budget films. So that's not just a Disney thing. It's another if you're trying to say they're trying to inflate their own numbers through a wide variety of means. That's just not really happening at this point. But let me know your thoughts about this and anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light the fire button. And honestly, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. If you want to see a full breakdown, go check out my channel, OMB Reviews, and we'll do the full box office charting over there. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.